Hi, Paul Thompson here. I'm going to talk today about chord substitutions in the context of having a theme that you're developing into lots of different types of material to use it in different kind of contexts and all that kind of stuff. How can you take your theme and use chord substitutions to allow you to use it lots of different times in lots of different places and contexts? So let's start with a simple alto flute theme. I'm going to record it and then we can play along to it, and I'll show you some ideas that'll get you started on thinking about the way that you can use chord substitutions. Here we go. Okay, super simple. We've basically got four notes: G, D, A, B flat. And the reason that I'm not using any passing notes, I'm going to use a chord per note just for the beginning of this demonstration, is this is the absolute simplest way to find as many chord substitutions as possible. Now, when you have passing notes, obviously you have to consider both of those notes in the context of any chord that you substitute with. But this way will give us the maximum kind of selection and how we might prioritize different types of chord according to the position in the melody, whether we feel like we're at a beginning or a destination or whether we're just passing through. And that also affects the types of chords that you might want to use. Right, so let's start with the absolute simplest thing we can, which is just to adhere to the scale that we appear to be in, which is the G minor scale. Two flats. And I'm not going to allow any other notes into the equation. That would sound like this. So I've got the score page up just so you can see roughly what I'm doing each time. So the first up is the G with G minor. Then we go to the D, so I've used D minor there. Then we go to the A, so I've used F major, which is the chord on the 7th degree of the minor scale, the natural minor scale. And then I've gone to G minor again. And both of those last two chords are first inversion, which means that rather than in the root position for F would be with the F at the bottom there, we go with the bass up to the 3rd, and that is first inversion. Second inversion would be the bass on the 5th and back to root. And the only reason I've done that is just because it sounds a bit less clunky than just using the bass every time, the root in the bass every single time. So that is super simple for that little melody. Now, there are lots and lots of things we can do. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to free ourselves from the restriction of worrying about the scale that we're working in, or the kind of key center, if you like, of what we're doing. That's the first thing we're going to throw away. So let's start with G minor still as our first chord. Now, the question that you've got to ask yourself is, what can you do for each of the subsequent chords, and what is the purpose of those subsequent chords? This might be that you want to end on G minor again for that final note, and you can do anything that you want in between. So let's start by doing that. So the first kind of simplest and most obvious one which we might use is D major instead of D minor. So now we have that A. What are we going to do here? Well, we could stay on D sharp and then go to the B flat and just back to G minor. It's a little bit simple, a little bit boring. But a little bit fruitier. We're starting to get a little bit more interesting. So what happens if we want to start and end still on G minor, but in between we want to go on a bit of a diversion? Now, we could pick literally any chord that contains that D. So, for example, we could have D major and minor, as we've said, We could have B flat major. We could have B minor. Now I'm only looking at triads at the moment just to keep things slightly simpler, because obviously the next step is to go into chords where that could be an additional note, like at its most basic we might say a seventh note. So we might have E flat major seventh. We might have E minor seventh. We might have E dominant seventh. We could then be using that note as a ninth, so that would be C major 9. But all of these are open for exploration. I'm not suggesting that we limit ourselves, but just for now, let's look at those triads. So just picking something at totally at random and thinking of the thing that shouldn't work, I'm going to go with B minor. So we've gone from G minor, which has that B flat in it. Then we're going to B minor for the D. Now, what about this A? Now, obviously, we've got A major and minor. We've got D minor, D major. We've got F major. We've got F sharp minor. Ooh, that one immediately grabs me. So our journey now takes us from B minor. That's with the D. Then when we go down to the A, I'm going to go to the F sharp minor. But we committed to going back to G minor. So let's see what happens when we play that. So G minor, B minor, F sharp minor, back to G minor. I did cheat a little bit at the end there by adding that passing note, which is the ninth, as you remember, from G counting up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we use those, as you saw in my last video, we always talk more about that as being a ninth rather than a second, because we're talking about the extensions being in thirds. And then you'd have 11 and so on. So what else could we do? Right, so back to our 4 notes. Now, the way that we've been treating these is that we've been less concerned with the passing through chords and more concerned with the start and the destination. But what if you want your destination to be in and of itself something that is going to continue a journey? So instead of it feeling like we're back to G minor and that we've kind of finished our journey, what if you want that to be taking you somewhere else? You want to... I really hesitate to use the word modulate, but we're kind of doing that. I don't want you to think too much about that, though, because that does add a layer of unnecessary confusion, I think, where you can really, you don't have to have a dictionary of chords in your head to be able to do this. This is really just about feeling your way through things, finding something that really sounds good and that speaks to you, because this is what it's all about. It's all about, we are the influences of all of the music that we listen to and love, and all the music that we have ever listened to and love. And the stuff that we take from that is the stuff and that we really treasure. Those moments are the things that help develop our compositional style. I really believe that. So when you're reacting like this, and when you're using, and this can be at the piano keyboard, it can be on the guitar, when you're doing this exploration, what you're doing is you're doing a quick run through your data banks in your brain to find the stuff that really excites you, that where you go, oh, that sounds good. And really, there's nothing more to it than fumbling through and trying to find stuff that's good. Absolutely learn as much as you can about harmony, so that you have some kind of, backup to fall back on. That's all about the craft, as well as, the kind of inspirational side of composing. Yes, it's really great to understand what's going on and what chord you're using and why that might relate to something and how that might lead you in a different direction. But there's a lot to be said for just improvising and trying to find something that sounds different and sounds good to you. Now, a long-winded way of saying, let's go from G minor, and when we end up on that final B flat, I want it to be E flat minor, which gives us, and again, I'm not using any extensions or anything like that to open this up more. I'm still going to stick with triads. How are we going to get there? Well, let's try something a bit different. So we'll start with our G minor for the first notes. Now, what about that D? Well, I think we should go for B flat major. For no other reason than I think we're going to end up in a flat place. So let's see if we can kind of skirt our way towards it in a kind of gradual fashion. So takes us to the B flat minor. Then now we're going to end up. Now there are lots of different ways of approaching this, and the one that I really love, because it's, you know, John Williamsism, is from the minor. Below, the semitone below. And you'll recognise that from lots of different cues. Lord of the Rings as well. I just remembered, I think it appears in Lord of the Rings. So what are we doing? We're going from G minor, B flat major, D minor, E flat minor. Sounds pretty fruity. Again, I'll try and just busk around, find, you know, some positions, some inversions that sound good, but again, only using the triads. Okay, so as you can see there, I went from the for the last two chords, I went for the second inversion of the D minor. That gives you that A at the bottom, which you can see there. And then I expanded outwards to go to the E flat minor. So there are lots of different ways you could do this. You could go first inversion, both of those chords. Sounds a little bit more expected. What about if we go from the root to the root? That sounds pretty cool. What about root down to the second inversion? That sounds quite nice. And then root down to the first inversion. Not so good. No, that's a bit clunky. So again, it's about getting the feel for a lot of these different things. And once you've got the idea in your head, okay, I know what chords I'm going to use. At that point, you can start to think about the inversions that you're going to use. And that the note that you put in the bass makes a huge, huge difference. It really changes the flavor of the chord. And it will help you to make a move towards the next transitional chord in the sequence. So some sequences sound natural and sound like they're inevitably leading to the next one, and some inversions put together don't sound very good at all. They sound kind of disparate, clunky, jarring. It's one of those really bizarre things about the way that our minds process the moving of inner parts, and especially the outer parts of, you know, your melody, your bass line. Obviously, those are the kind of key things that your mind is hanging on to as it interprets what's coming along. And so those things will have a huge impact on the way that you perceive this. Now we're in E flat. We could you know, have a part, even if you repeat the same melody. And then we've got F, and then to the G flat, which takes us to G flat major, which is quite a nice change. There's lots and lots of different things. So that's kind of looking at the way that we might do it only using triads. Now, when you so we've covered our idea of kind of destinations and passing chords, and whether you want to have, whether you want to signpost specific moments or you want them to feel like they're transitional points. What about when you start to add in when you start to add in the additional extensions of the chords? Then that opens you up to a huge variety of stuff. So we go back to our G minor. Now, there's so many things you can do. So let's start with G minor, as before. Now, with our D, what can we do? Well, let's think through them. So let's start with that as the ninth. So it could be C minor ninth. Lots of different ways to do that. Let's have a look at some of the positions. So if we go from the root, that's a really nice one. That's using the first inversion. So with the E flat of that C minor on the bottom and our ninth on the top. Now what we're doing here is we're signaling with those outer notes really clearly what the chord is to the listener. You've got the minor third, which tells you it's a minor chord. You've got the ninth on the top as part of the melody, a really important note. Your brain kind of starts to fill in the middle bit. It could be something else. Let's go straight to it. It could be the seventh of E flat. Let's try again. It could be the sharp 11, which, as you remember, is the fourth of the scale, but the extended version. So that's the movie note, as we looked at in our last video. So really wonderful as a passing note. So that would be a nice version. What else? Now this is a good one. This is you could interpret this in a number of different ways, but my immediate instinct is to feel like it wants to go it's kind of like a flat 9. It's like a dominant chord on D, but with a flat 9. You could look at it as being that kind of, F sharp diminished seventh chord, resolving. Lots of different ways to think about it. What about well, that's just another version of E flat, a kind of suspended E flat with that there. Now the thing that really sounds nice about this is you've got the tritone in there, and chords with the tritone always sound great. Don't really know why. And also obviously you've got, that's a semitone clash or a major seventh clash, depending on the way that you want to look at it. If you played them together, they don't sound very nice, but here at a distance, you can do all kinds of funky stuff. Or we might voice that, or even, or lots of different ways. You literally, this is the way that I love to do it, is to kind of improvise your way through it and see what you can find. So we're only on the second chord. So let's just pick one of those. And then our next chord, again, or this could, if we think about this, we've gone, that's really leading us very directly into things that have, obviously all of the D variants. That's a nice one. That's really, really fruity. So D minor, D major. again, that's a really nice one because it's desperate to resolve, and it's kind of, you know, it's got that whether you want to call it a sharp 5, you probably do, because it's going to resolve that way rather than, or it might do, it might be you know, you might call it a flat 13, but in D, obviously. But then what else could we do? So the interesting thing about this is that when you land on it, because of the context of what you've been listening to previously, it sounds odd and discordant. But check this out. Okay. Yeah. Again, all of the things that you're picking, all of the ways that you're allowing the inner voices to move are going to give context and meaning to the chord that you choose. And the amazing thing about this is that you really can almost pick any chord. You can almost pick any chord. That's the beauty of it. You've got to free yourself from thinking, oh, what key am I in? Oh, yeah, I can use the 4 and the 5 and then maybe a minor 3, or forget about all that stuff. Just go with the flow. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of mad stuff you can do. So I'm aware this is not a terribly theoretical video in the sense that I haven't given you lots and lots of specific information about using, you know, where to use dominant 7th chords, where to use, you know, kind of 6/7 or a minor major, you know, that the Bernard Herrmann chord and all that kind of stuff. What I want you to do is I want you to just to try sitting down with a simple melody, really slow moving, because that's the best way to practice this kind of stuff. Give your brain time to think about the next chord and to hear the sequence as it's going along. Just pick a couple, it could be 3 notes or 4 notes. Pick them at random and then stick to those notes, but allow yourself to search out different chords and remember that the inversions make a huge, huge difference to whether the chord sounds logical. And that is about the way that the voice leading is being done at the bass. So think about yourself as a little band. You've got a singer on the top and keep that solid. Don't change any of those notes. We'll have a look at changing those notes in the next video about this kind of reharmonization experimentation. Keep the singer singing the same thing. Keep the bassist thinking about the line of the notes, the movement, and how that can sound logical and not kind of jarring, sort of, you know. Actually, that sounded quite good. You see what I mean? It's actually quite hard to play things that are inherently wrong. We've got all these notes and they actually all sound great in kind of context. You know, you can create the context deliberately to fit what you're actually doing, how you're experimenting. You'll hear though if it doesn't sound right. That's the key thing, and the reason that you'll hear it is instinct. And you got to stop overthinking it. You know, I overthought this kind of stuff for years and years and years, and then kind of just realised actually I just need to play it and see if it sounds right to my brain, to my kind of instinctive compositional self. It sounds good or it doesn't sound good. It's that straightforward. And the beauty of this is that no two people will go exactly the same path. Your preferences are so varied, and they are created by all the music that you love and you've listened to and that you've trained your musical compositional brain on. So I would entreat you to go away, have a play with this kind of stuff. Any comments, any ideas for ways to explore this kind of thing in the comments below, be fantastic. Share your ideas with everybody else who's watching this. And we will come back to this because the next step is to look at the actual melody line. And then we enter a whole new world of excitement. But for now, just concentrate on, initially maybe with the triads and then with the extensions, allowing those melody notes to become extensions of chords, and see where you get to. And I hope that this will open up, if you're not already doing this, I hope that this will open up a new kind of world of musical possibility for your compositions. It's brilliant when you need to use the same tune, but you want it to sound different. You can make it, the really simplest way from happy to sad or vice versa. But you can make things mysterious, yearning, threatening. I mean, it's just, you've got an absolute wide open space that you can start exploring just by simply using these chord substitutions. And then just think about whether you're traveling through or whether you're reaching a destination. And that is the functional reason for this piece of music that you're writing. What are you trying to do? That's the thing that's the overarching thing. And then you say, right, within that kind of constraint, I'm going to experiment and see where I get to. Hope this was useful. As ever, leave us some comments. One of those would be great for the funny chords. And subscribe if you haven't already, and lots more of this kind of stuff coming. I hope this is useful. Cheers. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.